Today, as we're kind of in this moment in between series, and I want to take one weekend, just this weekend, and I want to try to expand our vision today. Particularly expand our vision for the work that God is doing, not only in our communities, not only in our state, not only in our country, but in the world. And the role that I believe God's given us as a church to play in that work. You know, when someone speaks their last words, I don't know if you've ever been in the hospital room. Some of you have had that moment where you've been with someone, maybe it was a grandparent, for some of you a parent, where they were in their final days. And when they are beginning to speak their final words, their last words, what do? You listen with a little bit more intent, don't you? You lean in a little bit more when they're sharing their last words. And, you know, there's a moment where Jesus actually speaks his last words. And I just feel like we should listen and pay particular attention to the last words that Jesus spoke. These were literally the last words that Jesus shared with his followers. This is what it says in Acts chapter 1. Jesus says this. He says, "You will be my witnesses." The very last things he says while he was here on earth. You will be my witnesses. Who's you? You as in you, my followers. You, followers of Jesus. You, Christians. You, lives changed by Christ. All the yous that begin to follow me. He says, you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere. Listen to this. In Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Final words right there. Now, let me just give you a little bit of geography here. I don't want to take you back to middle school, but actually it's kind of helps to make the point here. See, Jerusalem was the city that they were near at the point. It's a small sort of, city when it comes to geographically speaking, right? And then Judea was the immediate surrounding region right around Jerusalem. Then Samaria was a little bit further away. And then he says to the ends of the earth, which is obviously further away. In other words, there's an outward momentum, an outward movement to what Jesus is saying here. And he's saying, my followers will be driven by an impulse to care not only for those in their neighborhoods, that's our Jerusalem, not only for those in our communities, not only for those in our region, Judea, not only for those in our state, not only for those in our country, but he says, my followers will gain a heart for the broader world, to the ends of the earth. In other words, I just feel like we have a responsibility as a church to always consider what role God might have for us to play in the work that he's doing around the world. And we decided a long time ago as a church that we were going to take these last words, these final words of Jesus very seriously. We decided that we wanted to be a church that would be willing to join God in his work around the world, that we would be willing to step into communities around the world where poverty and lack of resources were robbing people of potential and dignity. We decided we would step into communities around the world where food security and water retention and education was lacking. And most importantly, we decided that we were going to invest in communities around the world where there was a spiritual need, where people needed life-giving churches that we could help support so that we would see more lives changed by Christ all over the world. The bottom line is, that we decided a long time ago we're going to be a church that takes the last words of Jesus seriously, that we'd be willing to go to the ends of the earth. But before telling you what kinds of things you've been involved with as a result of that decision, the kinds of things we've been involved with as a church, I just want to tell you why it matters so much, why this matters. How many of you guys could finish this statement? This is not a trick question, by the way. Just finish this statement. Actions speak louder than... Are you serious? Some of you have never heard that. Some of you didn't respond. Are you serious? You didn't know that? All right, let's one more time. Actions speak louder than... There you go. That's so true, isn't it? I mean, we all kind of know that, and it's like that's one of the first things we kind of learn in life, isn't it? And we just intuitively kind of know this. I would imagine that we fundamentally, every single person here right now, you fundamentally agree with that statement too. I mean, aren't you glad that when you've been in seasons in your own personal life, when you've been in seasons that you needed a little bit of help, you needed a little bit of support, you needed some love in that moment in your season of your life, that you didn't have someone who just desired to help you, but they actually did something to help you? Aren't you grateful for that? Aren't you glad that the time that you most needed someone in your life, they didn't just send you their thoughts and prayers, whatever that means, but they actually gave you their prayers and their presence? The people that you're most grateful for in your life, they're not the ones who had a desire to love you. They're the ones who actually put forth an effort to love you. They acted on it. They demonstrated their commitment to you. They risked something for you. And here's what another thing I think I know about all of us here today is that the times that you felt, personally, you have felt that you made the most meaningful impact in someone else's life, you didn't do it from a distance. You never just clicked like on TikTok, on TikTok and just said, oh man, I've made a difference in the world today. The times that you felt like you made the most meaningful contributions to someone else's life, I think I can guarantee you that somewhere underneath that, it was a decision that you made to move from desire to helping to actually acting on their behalf, to demonstrating that desire. And what I want you to hear today is that impulse that you have, that impulse that we all have to transform our desires to meeting needs to actually doing something to meeting needs, that's a godly impulse. That was imprinted on you as being a result of being created in the image of God, which all of you are. One of the most compelling realities of Jesus, when you begin to read the New Testament accounts, which are eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life, and I know some of you are newer to the Bible, and I'm telling you, start with Jesus, start in the Gospel, start with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These were eyewitnesses. They witnessed the life of Jesus, and if you begin to read those, one of the things that you will see again and again and again and again and again is that Jesus would come across needs, people in need, and instead of just desiring to change and help meet those needs, Jesus actually engaged those people. He acted on their behalf. Actions speak louder than words. Jesus elevated the dignity of women. He invited them to follow him. No rabbi in the first century did that. None. Jesus elevated the dignity of children. In a culture in the first century where everyone dismissed children, Jesus embraced them publicly and blessed them. Nobody did that. Jesus crossed ethnic lines, investing in the lives of those who were not Jewish. Nobody did that. In a world where the pervasive mindset was that if someone was suffering or someone was sick or someone was struggling, well, that must be because God was punishing them for something. Jesus reversed all that, and he stepped in and actually healed those people and loved them. And his closest followers had a front row seat to this. They got to see all of this lived out in action. They saw Jesus share meals and dinners with thieves and prostitutes. They were there when lepers walked up to Jesus. Lepers were the walking dead in the first century. Literally ostracized from the community because of their skin disease. And they expected, when they saw these lepers walk up to Jesus, they expected Jesus to do what everyone else had done their entire life, turn the other way. But Jesus actually walked towards them. And then he did the unthinkable. He touched them. Again and again and again and again, they witnessed Jesus, who they came to believe was God in the flesh, transform desire to helping others to acting on their behalf. They saw the pattern, and it was real clear to them. See needs, meet needs. You see needs, meet needs. You see needs, meet needs. And one of those disciples who witnessed this, his name was John. And when John was an old man, he actually spent time reflecting back on his time spent with Jesus. And he wrote several letters to followers of Jesus. What's remarkable is we still have copies of these letters today. Here we are, 2024, we can still read them. And in these letters that John wrote, you see a theme develop when it comes to following Jesus. And you know what the theme is? Actions speak louder than words. This is how he says it in one of the letters that he wrote. This is in 1 John chapter 3:16. He says this, we know what real love is. We know what real love is. Well, how do we know that, John? Well, I'll tell you, we saw Jesus. Jesus gave up his life for us. We know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. There's two incredibly important ideas here in this statement that I just want to point out real quick. Love, gave. These two things are always intimately tied together, aren't they? Name someone who's loved you in your life, and I can guarantee you at some point they've been generous to you. Name someone who's been generous to you, and I can guarantee that you felt loved by them. These two things are intricately bound. Love and generosity. You know, God is generous to the core. And this generous God pours out his love on us with no strings attached, no contingencies. The kind of love that gives and sacrifices. And here's what I just want you to hear. You will never, ever, You will never see a more clear, vivid depiction of true love than when you stare at the cross of our Savior, who was willing to do and go through all of that for you, to endure that for you. Not because he had to, by the way, because he chose to. Not because his hand was forced, not begrudgingly, not with contempt. So, when I was little, I used to think, well, Jesus, of course, he'd love me. He had to, right? He's like, good gracious, Jason, I got to go to the cross for you. Fine, I'll do it because I'm God, but I don't like it. No. He wanted to. He willingly, in love, as John says here, gave himself for you. Not just for you, for us. Well, who us? For all of us. No matter your past. No matter your situation, the poor us's he gave his life for, the wealthy us's, the sick, the healthy, the worst criminal among us us's right now, he gave his life for. The perfect little angel us's in the room right now, I see you. I always know you're the ones who sit up straight the entire gathering. You're just like that. He gave his life for you too. The addicted us's in the room. The us's that you wish that wasn't true for. The us's who don't vote like you. The us's who don't look like you, who don't share your values. The us's who are Eagles fans. The us's who are Cowboys fans. Even them. Everyone that you've ever locked eyes with is the unique object of God's relentless love. You know that, right? A love so deep that he gave his life for them. And look where John goes next. John's like, well, this has some implications for us how we live. He says, so in light of that, we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. So we, in light of, because of, since that's true. In other words, there's a tie between receiving the love of God and giving that same love to other people. You know, it's fascinating to me that John does not say that in light of God's immense love for us, demonstrated in this way, that the most appropriate response would be to love God back the same way. See, that's what I would have thought he would have said. Because God loved you so much, you should love God. It's not what he says. He says, because God loved you so much, the most appropriate response is to love others. Because to love others is to love God. See, John's articulating an idea here that became central to the Christian community, and it's this. We've talked about this before. We cannot talk about this enough. It's this. The most appropriate response to the extravagant love of God is to love others extravagantly. The most appropriate response to the extravagant love of God is always to love others extravagantly. And John pushes even more practical here when it comes to articulating what this looks like in practice. Because I would imagine people reading this in the first century, that, they're in a little home in modern-day Turkey, they're reading this letter, and they're like, all right, so how do I do that? How do I love that way? And John's like, I'm glad you asked. Look what he says next. He says, well, I'll give you a real simple way. If someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need, but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? I'm just going to let that sit there for a moment. Because that's hard to hear. John's like, let's not overcomplicate it, guys. When you see someone in need, and if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're not a follower of Jesus, you're off the hook on all this, all right? You're like, you're good. But if you're here and your life changed by Christ, he's like, if you're a follower of Jesus and you see a need and you have an ability to meet that need, show some compassion and meet it. And two observations from this little statement right here I just want to make. The first is this. For followers of Jesus, compassion is not something we feel as much as it is something we do. See, John links the idea together of showing compassion. That's what he said, right? To show compassion, to demonstrate it. Compassion requires reaction. Compassion that stops short of reaction, you know what that is? That's pity. That's pity. And I don't think you need me to tell you that the world is full of people who feel pity for others and don't do a thing about it. There's no shortage of pity in our world. But people who live compassionately, who see the needs and then react in response, well, that's a different story. When someone's need and your capacity to meet that need intersect and line up, that's the moment for reaction. And sometimes it's in big ways. Most of the time it's in really small ways throughout the day. Jenny needs the dishes washed. I have an extra 5 minutes. Am I going to respond? Your coworker needs some help on a project. You've got a little bit of margin. Will you respond? That mom walking into Starbucks with a stroller the size of a small SUV. She's about to walk in. Do I hold the door open for her? Do I respond? Guys, it's small. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overcomplicate it. But do you know where all of this starts? It actually all starts with a little 4-letter word John said there. And you can skip right over it, but this 4-letter word to me is the key to unlocking it all because it's the starting point of living with a life of compassion and impact. This is the word, sees. Whoever sees a need. Are you looking? Do you have your eyes open? Because, see, there's an assumption that John's making here. And that assumption is that we're actually looking for needs that we can meet. I'm going to be real honest with you. There's so many times I just don't want to look. Don't want to look. It feels a little bit overwhelming, especially when we begin to consider the ends of the earth kind of talk that Jesus gave and the broader needs that exist in the broader world. I remember the first time, like it was yesterday, that I was made uncomfortable by the condition that so many others in our world exist in. Jenny and I, it was the first time we actually had traveled internationally, and we had gone to Cambodia in Asia, and it was such an incredible experience to see new cultures, to have all your senses engaged with things you've never seen and smells you've never smelled, and hear languages you've never heard. It's just so inspiring, and it just kind of gets all your senses firing. And one of the things that stood out from the moment we touched down, from the moment we landed, was the traffic and the driving patterns in the city of Phnom Penh in Cambodia. And the thing that stood out about the driving patterns is there were none. I mean, it was every person for themselves. I got a picture here. This is one example. That's a normal road right there. And that's everywhere. There are men, literally, groups just hopping over the median. I don't know what they're doing, but there's children on these motorcycles. There's, big rigs and 18-wheelers right in the midst of. I can tell you what you'll never find here. Stoplights don't exist. That's the closest I've ever come to actually seeing somewhere what it looks like to leave the link after an Eagles game. That's it. It's the closest anyone's ever come to recreating it. One evening, we jumped into a tuk-tuk, which is an open-air taxi, and we were heading to dinner, and of course, we got stuck in that. And at one point, as we were stopped, I looked over to my left, and I saw this little boy standing in the middle of the road, covered from head to toe in dirt, gravel, exhaust. All he was wearing was a t-shirt. That's it, literally. He just had a little t-shirt on. And my best guess is he was probably about 3 years old. And he's standing in the middle of it all. And he walks straight up to us, to me, and he just puts his hands out for anything I could give him. You ever felt powerless? Although you feel compelled to want to do something, you just don't feel like you can for one reason or another. It just feels too big. That's an overwhelming feeling. To see need like that and to feel powerless to do anything about it. And because of that, because of sometimes that feeling of being overwhelmed, because of that feeling of being powerless, I'm not proud to admit this. In fact, I'm quite ashamed to admit this. My most natural reaction in that moment, I'm not sure I really consciously chose it, I just found myself doing it, was that I looked away. I just didn't want to see it. And I think that that's our default response when we see need that we just don't know what to do with sometimes. It's just to do this. We shut our eyes. I'm not going to see it, I'm not going to see it. The problem is you can't really make your way in the world doing that either, can you? Because it's just easier to not see. But I think John is giving us a warning here. The most appropriate response to the extravagant love of God is always to love others extravagantly, but there's just no way we can love like that when our eyes are closed. LCBC, we can't close our eyes. We can't close our eyes to the needs of others. And I know that if we commit to living with eyes open, if we live with eyes open to the needs around us, to the needs around our world, it will feel overwhelming because there are far more needs out there than there is our ability to meet those needs. But I want you to hear something from this passage that John wrote because he's so practical. He simplifies it. He makes it so simple. And he says this. He says, if you need, do you remember what he said? If you see a need and have the ability to meet it, act on it. And you know what I love about that? You don't have the ability to meet every single need you come across. I don't have the ability to meet every single need that I come across. But don't close your eyes as a result of that. You don't have the ability to meet every need that you come across, but too many of us are holding back from doing something just because we can't do everything. And we can't go there. So again, as a church, we just made a decision that we're going to be a church that follows Jesus to the ends of the earth like he asked us to and keeps our eyes open to needs that could be met. And we began to explore how our church can speak to and address the deepest needs of poverty, of healthcare, of education, of the rights of women in oppressed countries. And we decided as a church that just because we couldn't do everything, that's not going to stop us from doing something. And so we found a few partner organizations who were excelling in their work in some of the poorest regions of the world. Organizations working in communities, helping raise people out of poverty, educating them, providing access to clean water and food security, getting them access to health care, and most importantly, getting them involved in churches where they would experience, these children in particular would experience the ultimate hope that they need in Christ. And we just found along the way that the easiest way for us as a church to partner in these communities is through child sponsorships, directly impacting individual families who are under-resourced. We began working with our partner organizations to identify a few communities around the world that we feel like we could help make an impact. And I'm just so grateful to be able to tell you the story of what you've been doing over the years. I feel so grateful to tell you this story of the impact you've been having around the world. You know, we're now working in 10 communities around the world in 4 different continents. Here's a list of the countries that we're currently working in. We're involved in Bolivia. We're working in Honduras, Kenya, India, Lebanon, not Lebanon, that's in Pennsylvania, Lebanon, other side of the world, Haiti. And today, I'm real excited to tell you that we're adding 2 new countries that our new locations are actually being working in. We're adding El Salvador and Dominican Republic. Those are 2 of the most impoverished nations in the Western Hemisphere. We got to keep our eyes open. And so each of our 23 locations has a specific community that they work in now in one of those countries. And here's what's crazy. Do you want to know how many children are sponsored by you, LCBC? This is it just blows me away. Here's how many children are sponsored by you. 7,429 children are now sponsored by this church around the world. And if you're not going to clap for that, I am, because I think that's pretty amazing. I think it's absolutely amazing. You are such a generous church. You are a generous church. That's who we are. That's who we are, man. That's what we do. We give here. We meet needs. We are others first. And what's crazy to me is that when you monetize that and all the money we're kind of sending out, that comes out to about $3.5 million a year that this church is sending out collectively into those communities to bring good about. LCBC, I want you to know that you are responsible. I want you to know this. I want you to know the story God's writing through you. You're responsible for entire regions now having access to clean water in Africa and Central America, affecting thousands of people. You have funded child development centers in Bolivia. You've built a school in Africa that has graduated hundreds of girls that would not have had the chance of escaping the group of poverty without the education you've helped provide. You've built a school in India that takes in children who are the lowest caste in India, kids everyone else has rejected, but you've provided a place for them to be educated and have their dignity restored. One of those impacted is a young woman named Deepiga. She grew up facing the unique challenges of poverty and domestic violence. That is a horrible combination. And she was in a desperate condition. But then one weekend, a family here at our church decided that they would be willing to see needs and meet them, because actions speak louder than words. And they decided to jump into child sponsorship. And as a little girl, Deepiga ended up sponsored by them. And even as a little girl, she already had desire to be used in this world for good things, because poverty can take a lot of things away from a child, but cannot take their dreams. There's so many children living in the most deplorable conditions around the world, and yet they still have goals for their lives. They want to become something because they've been created in the image of God. And that will never go away, and they just need an opportunity. And Deepiga already had aspirations to escape the grip of poverty and set a new course for her life and her family's life, but it was the sponsorship that enabled that to happen. And because of that, she was enrolled in the school that we built. And she ended up graduating with high honors. And she went on to medical school. The entire direction of a child's life forever altered because a family here at this church, on the other side of the world, was willing to open their eyes, see a need, and meet a need. Two sets of lives that could not have looked any more different, forever linked together now. But here's what I want you to hear. Here's what I want you to hear. There are thousands of lives around the world now being changed because of the work that you're doing, the children you're sponsoring. But what I want you to know is it also changes us. It opens our eyes to need. It exercises our muscles of generosity. It gives our families the opportunity to talk about the values of a follower of Jesus, that we see needs and meet them when we have the ability. Jenny and I, we've been in on this for a long, long time. We made a decision that we were jumping in, and it all started with sponsoring one child back. His name was Peter. We sponsored him for years and years. He graduated out of the program. Today we have 4, but I'm real excited to tell you this week we're getting a 5th. And if you were to come to our home, you'll find their pictures and letters kind of spread out in different places in our home. Pictures of Evelyn, a picture of Onesimus and Mutanu, and our little man Oliver. And I want to tell you about Oliver real quick. And I want to tell you about Oliver by talking about the shell, the coconut shell that I have here. A few years ago, we had a team from our church go down to Honduras to visit the community that we're invested in there, and that's the community that Oliver lives in. And when they were there, they ran into a young mom who was carrying around this coconut shell. And she made sure to send this back with the team to give to us. She was so proud to give this coconut shell because it was Oliver's mom. And she wanted to say thank you in whatever way she could. It may look like a shell to you, but this sits displayed in our home, reminding us that we may not be able to do everything, but that should not stop us from doing something. Because for that one family, it matters. And I got a coconut shell to prove it. So for those of you who are here today and you're sponsoring one of the 7,400 kids, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. But I also want all of you to hear, we're not done. We're not done going to the end of the earth. We're moving full speed ahead with our partnerships in these different nations and communities in the world. And in just a moment, your campus pastor is going to come out and talk to you specifically at your location about the partnership that your campus is involved in. And so the challenge is real simple today. If you feel God nudging you towards sponsoring a child, of jumping in with the thousands of us who are doing that to help change the trajectory of your life, man, just respond to that nudge. That's it. That's it. If God's nudging you, just respond to that nudge that He's given you. You'll be able to go out to the atrium at your location, get more information, and leave with a child to sponsor. And if you're watching online, you'll get instructions in a moment how you can respond as well. Don't close your eyes, LCBC. We can't close our eyes. Let's be people with eyes wide open to the needs around us, willing to meet needs when we see them. Let's continue to follow Jesus into our communities. Let's start there, into our regions, but also to the ends of the earth. And let's commit ourselves again to the conviction that just because we can't do everything, it's not going to stop us from doing something. So I'm going to hand a lot of you back right now. Some of you are going to stay with me, but for most of you, I'm going to hand you back to your campuses so that you can hear about the specific community that you have a chance to make an impact in even today. All right, so if you're still with me right now, I have a little bit of a plot twist I want to give you. So several campuses are still with me, and I want to give you a little bit of a plot twist in all this, because if you're still here and with me right now, then that means that your location is partnered with World Vision. We've actually partnered with World Vision for almost 25 years now and have formed an incredible relationship with them. I think they're doing exceptional work all around the world. We've been working specifically with World Vision in Kenya and Lebanon, and I'm excited to announce that we're going to begin working with World Vision in Bolivia, El Salvador, and Dominican Republic now as well. And in just a moment, we're going to release you to go out to sponsor a child if you're feeling nudged to join us. But here's the plot twist, okay? Here we go. Here's the plot twist in it all. See, for years, the traditional way that you would get partnered with a child is that you would go out and you would choose a child, and then you would start the sponsorship relationship. That's how I got started with all of ours. But a few years ago, World Vision, they had a simple and yet I think it's brilliant shift on the whole experience. They began to ask this question, what if we could give the children dignity and empowerment over the sponsorship process? And they made a decision to flip the script on how to get partnered and how to help you get partnered up with the child to sponsor. And so today, instead of you going out and finding a picture of a child that you choose to sponsor, today you're going to go out and you're going to have your picture taken. Put your makeup on. And this week, here's the cool part, and this week, just 3 days from now, the World Vision staff in the community that your campus is partnered with is going to take that picture of you, print it out, hang it on a wall with all the others here at our church that are saying they want to sponsor, and there will be and they're going to bring all the children in that community in, and there's going to be a child that comes and chooses you. Putting agency and empowerment and dignity back into their hands. And by the way, giving you the gift of knowing what it feels like to be chosen. This week, Jenny and I are actually joining a team. We're traveling down to one of our communities to be there when the kids come into that room and choose their sponsor. I cannot wait to see it, and I can't wait to be chosen. So we thought we would show you what it looks like before we head out today. Take a look.
Let me be filled with kindness and compassion for the one for whom you love and gave your son for humanity. Increase my love, so help me to love with open arms like you do. A love that erases all the lies and sees the truth. Oh, that when they look in my eyes, they would see you. Even in just a smile, they would feel the Father's love.
Are you ready? How could you not be ready after that message and after that video? It is time for you to be chosen by one of our kids in our global community that we support, Pilon, Bolivia. It's time for you to get to be chosen by one of those kids, for them to have the dignity of choosing their sponsor family or couple or individual, so that you can partner with God in working in their life. It's time. Follow the QR code right there on the screen. It'll take you to a yellow link. You can tap the link to load a photo or take a photo of you and your family, your significant other, whoever's gonna be sponsoring this child. Then it gets printed out and it gets taken to Pilon, Bolivia. And there will be a choosing party where kids get to walk up and say, I want this person, this couple, this family to sponsor me, for God to work through them in my life. Amazing. It's time. Follow the links to see it happen. But I want to tell you, I cannot wait, because I am getting on a plane to go to Pilon, Bolivia to be a part of this choosing party so that I can see these kids and our sponsor community choose you. I'm gonna watch it firsthand and I cannot wait. I've never got to see it before. My wife and I and our kids, we're excited. We want to be a sponsor family, so we are watching to be chosen by one of these kids. Our picture will be on display. I cannot wait to see it and to see how God will work in and through us in the lives of these kids in Pilon, Bolivia with World Vision. It is time. So take the opportunity, let God work in and through you in the lives of one of our kids. LCBC, may the Lord bless and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. And may He show you His favor and give you His peace.